Samantha sat in the attic of her childhood home, surrounded by dusty boxes filled with old memories. Her mother, Evelyn, had passed away months ago, and Samantha had finally gathered the courage to go through her belongings. The house felt eerily quiet, amplifying the weight of the task before her. As she opened one box after another, each item whispered fragments of a past she had never fully understood. Among the piles of papers, a bundle of letters caught her eye. They were tied with a faded blue ribbon, the edges yellowed with age. Samantha untied the ribbon and began to sort through the letters. Most were ordinary, simple notes her mother had written over the years, detailing mundane events like family gatherings, Samantha's school days, and holidays. But one letter stood out. It wasn't addressed to anyone, and it had never been sent. The envelope was sealed, but the ink was smudged, as if her mother had cried while writing it. Curiosity took over, and Samantha carefully opened the letter. As her eyes scanned the words, her heart raced. The letter was addressed to a man named Daniel, a name she had never heard before in her life. Her hands trembled as she continued reading, her breath catching in her throat. "Dear Daniel, I've kept this secret for years, and I don't know how much longer I can live with it. You have a daughter, Daniel. Her name is Samantha. She's beautiful, smart, and full of life. Every time I look at her, I see a piece of you, and it breaks my heart. You left before I could tell you I was pregnant, and I was too proud to chase after you. I thought I could do it on my own, but now I wonder if I made the right choice. Samantha deserves to know the truth, but I'm terrified. How will she look at me when she finds out I've been lying to her all these years? How will she feel about you when she realizes you never knew about her? Please forgive me, Evelyn." Samantha's world shifted in an instant. She had always believed her father had died in a car accident when she was a baby. That's what her mother had told her, the story she had clung to her entire life. But now, sitting in the attic, she realized her entire life had been built on a lie. Her mother had kept this secret for decades, never once letting it slip. And now, Evelyn was gone, leaving Samantha to uncover the truth on her own. The letter felt like a bomb that had detonated in her heart, each word echoing with betrayal, confusion, and deep pain. For the next few days, Samantha couldn't think of anything else. The letter haunted her, the words playing over and over in her mind. Who was Daniel? Why had her mother never told her about him? And why had Evelyn kept this secret until the end of her life? Samantha knew she needed answers, and the only way to find them was to search for Daniel. Determined, Samantha dove into an investigation. She sifted through family records, old photo albums, and letters, hoping for some clue about who Daniel was. She made phone calls to distant relatives, spoke to her mother's old friends, and even contacted family acquaintances she hadn't seen in years. But no one had ever heard of Daniel. He seemed like a ghost from the past. Then, while sorting through more of her mother's things, Samantha found something, a photograph. It was an old picture of her mother, young and carefree, standing next to a man she didn't recognize. He had dark hair and a warm smile, and there was something familiar about him that tugged at Samantha's heart. On the back of the photograph, in her mother's neat handwriting, were the words, "Evelyn and Daniel, 1982. Samantha's hands shook as she stared at the picture. This was him. This was the man her mother had loved. The man who, as it turned out, was her father. With the photograph as her only clue, Samantha began to dig deeper. She spent hours online, combing through public records and databases, trying to find any information she could about Daniel. Days turned into weeks, and just as she was about to give up, she found an old newspaper article from the early 1980s. It was about a local artist named Daniel Foster, who had lived in her hometown before moving to New York to pursue his career. Her heart skipped a beat. This had to be him, Daniel Foster, the man her mother had written about. The man who had unknowingly fathered her. Armed with this new information, Samantha booked a flight to New York, determined to find Daniel. When she arrived, The city felt overwhelming, its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets making her feel small. But she pressed on, following every lead she could find. After several days of searching, she finally found an address, a small studio apartment where Daniel Foster was said to live. Samantha stood outside the door, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure what she would say or how Daniel would react, but she knew she couldn't walk away now. She knocked on the door, and after a few moments, it opened. Standing before her was an older man, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes still holding a kindness that felt familiar. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Samantha held out the photograph, her hands trembling. "I think you knew my mother," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's eyes widened as he looked at the photograph. He stared at it for what felt like an eternity before finally meeting her gaze. "Evelyn," he said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "I haven't heard that name in so long." Samantha swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm Samantha," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm your daughter." The days that followed were filled with long conversations and tearful revelations. Daniel had never known about Samantha. He had left town before Evelyn realized she was pregnant, and by the time she gave birth, he was already living a new life in New York. Evelyn had chosen to keep the secret, raising Samantha on her own and never reaching out to Daniel. As they talked, Samantha began to understand the complexity of her mother's decisions. Evelyn had loved Daniel deeply, but she had been afraid of disrupting his life, of holding him back from his dreams. And in the end, she had chosen to protect Samantha from a painful truth, even if it meant living with the weight of that decision for the rest of her life. Samantha's anger and confusion slowly gave way to understanding. The letter, once a symbol of betrayal, became a bridge, connecting her to a part of her mother's life she had never known. In finding Daniel, Samantha not only uncovered the truth about her father, but also gained a new appreciation for the sacrifices her mother had made. The unwritten letter, filled with secrets and regrets, had finally brought the reconciliation her mother had longed for, but never had the courage to seek. And in that moment, Samantha felt a sense of closure, a peace she had been searching for all along.